Hello. Today has been a day full of technical issues, so my apologies that we are getting started late. Hopefully you hung in there, but otherwise you will be getting the recording. So today we're going to be talking about getting into selective colleges and universities. It is a completely different situation from your non-super selective schools. So we'll get into all the admissions factors and how admissions committees process the applications and a number of things about student preparation. So without further ado, I will introduce myself. I grew up, born and raised in Chicago, grew up in the southwest suburbs, so I was Southside Irish, and enjoyed that. Enjoyed getting White Sox tickets because I got good grades. That was nice and fun to go to. But like a lot of kids, I had no clue what I was going to do when I graduated. Just not a clue. And the counselors were not there to give any direction. I looked at my parents. They really didn't give direction either. My mom said, apply to these 4 selective colleges. So I did, got into some, ended up at Northwestern, started in chemistry, moved over to the engineering school, and graduated 4 years later with a bachelor's in industrial engineering and management sciences from the number 4 engineering school in the country. However, it was not a good fit for me, and it wasn't what I really wanted to do. I was pleasing my mom, who got the bumper sticker and the sweatshirt and the jacket and all that stuff. And I got a highfalutin, expensive education in a field I really didn't care about at a school where, although I obviously could be academically successful, it really wasn't a good fit for me, and it really didn't help me become my best. So after a couple of years, I did a big turn and went to graduate school. Changed fields to theology, thoroughly enjoyed myself, graduated with honors with my master's degree, and it was night and day difference. Loved every minute of it, studied well beyond all what my class required, read and read and read and wrote, and just thoroughly enjoyed it, as opposed to grinding my way through. So if you are looking to get the bumper sticker, don't do it. If you're looking at going to a selective college because you want to make money, but you really don't enjoy studying or reading, you really don't want to waste your time with these schools, because you're going to end up grinding through, if you make it at all, and really not getting out of it what you need to, and not growing and developing as a person. So we'll talk more about that later. A number of years later, had a number of children, lived in the San Diego area for 20-some years, and started a college planning business, responding to the questions of other homeschool parents who hadn't gone to college and didn't know what to do. I've shifted the business to the Midwest. This entire time I've served families across the country, so where I am really doesn't matter. And I use both my engineering and science and math background as well as my humanities background from theology to help students. Admissions and how to articulate yourself and explore majors and careers and concentrations, and all of that is different on the 2 different sides. And being able to work with both has really benefited my students enormously. I belong to a lot of professional organizations which hold us all to high ethical standards, which is wonderful. I've also spoken at a number of them. I'm considered an expert in the field at this point, had my business far longer than most people have. I've been teaching for over 18 years as well at this point, and that adds another dimension to what I bring to the table as far as understanding what's going on with high school students and how they develop and grow. As I mentioned, I wrote a book a few years ago, The Ultimate Guide to Top Quality College Planning, which is available through Amazon.com. I am working on my next book right now and hope to have that out by the end of the year. And that's going to be more of a step-by-step guide through the 4 years of high school. I've had a number of schools that accepted my clients, which is very exciting. The primary thing to keep in mind, however, is that it's the students' credentials. So I'm helping them articulate themselves and select schools and majors and all of that. But the students are really the ones that have done these things. So I'm very pleased to have been part of their process. But my hat is off to those students and their achievements. So let's move forward into admissions. So there are 20 admissions factors, and I have them colored in 4 different groupings here on purpose. They all are considered. All of the upper tier schools and most of the good schools across the country do what is called holistic admissions. So they really try to look at everything that they can. And so that's going to include things that obviously you have no control over, like your gender and your state of residence and your citizenship. Gender is going to come into play in majors and schools that are very off balance. So they have far more men than women or far more women than men. That'll be a consideration. State of residence at the elite schools really doesn't come into play very much. Their classes tend to even out without them even trying. But at times that will come into play. Personal hardship is a significant factor that's coming to the fore these days. There's an awful lot of effort being put into helping those from disadvantaged circumstances get into colleges and to do well. So that can be a consideration. It can be quite a significant consideration. And if that is your circumstance, if maybe your high school doesn't offer any AP classes, for example, be assured that the colleges and universities in this elite tier are looking at you in context. So they are aware of what is available to you. They'll have regional admissions people that are familiar with the high schools and educational opportunities in your area. So that comes into play through the admissions process. The items here listed in blue are all flags or tags. These all help you get in. If you're a first-generation collegian, again, you'll be considered kind of like a personal hardship person. They really want to help you, and they're going to do what they can to assist you. They recognize that it is a very different thing to grow up in a household that does not have a parent with a college degree than it is to grow up with one who has. Your ethnicity, this is primarily with regard to minorities, which does not include Asians, but it includes the other minorities. There are a limited number of them that have the high academic credentials, and so everybody's competing for them. It's definitely help in admissions. They're accepted at a higher rate. Legacy students are those whose parents, their mother or their father, went to the college or university in question. This doesn't include siblings, it doesn't include grandparents, and legacy students are accepted at about twice the rate of everybody else. So it is definitely an advantage. A significant talent is also a flag, and those students typically are recruited athletes. It may also be recruited debate, high-level nationally ranked debaters. There's a few other groups besides athletes, but primarily it's athletics that is considered for talent. And they have slightly different criteria than everyone else. We'll talk about that more later. Development or VIP applicants are those who are children of like presidents and significant figures, because then the school will get more publicity, all of that. So that's definitely a leg up for them in admissions. And development are students whose parents or family are very wealthy and have or will be making significant contributions to the schools. So that's a very small group of people, but they do exist. These items here in bold are the major factors that admissions is going to consider. These are your academic things, and about 70% of the admissions decision is based on academic factors. So your GPA, whether it's weighted or unweighted, your class rank, and it's much better if the school reports an exact class rank, if that's one available. Sometimes with homeschoolers, there is no class rank, and they have ways to handle that. And then your test scores are very important. So the SAT or the ACT, and then your SAT subject test scores. And we will talk later about how to do well on those, how to handle that strategically. But the scores need to be top-notch. The schools do look at the level of academic challenge. If you took all honors classes and there were a bunch of APs you didn't take, that is not a good thing. You need to challenge yourself and you need to do well. And then they also do look at academic awards, and we'll talk a little bit later about what those could be. The last category, which is the other 30%, which is the primary consideration, is what you did extracurricular, outside of school. Community service is a minor part of that, unless it's a significant part of what you've done. And we will get into the details of those particular areas as well as we move forward. Now, in the application reading process, so this is what happens in the admissions office. So especially at the Ivies, they're going to, well, at every school, they're going to compile your file. They need to get the test scores from the testing agencies. They need to get your transcripts from your schools, your recommendations from your recommenders, your application, any other supplemental information. And then finally, they have a complete file. And at the Ivies, they're going to calculate your academic index, which I'll be talking about in the next slide. And that's a way of viewing your academic credentials. Typically, the initial read is by the regional admissions rep. They know the high schools in your area, and don't expect that you will have met them or that they will remember you. They travel several months of the year and meet hundreds of students every hour almost. Sometimes they're doing 4 or 5 schools in a day. They certainly aren't going to remember any particular student. But they do have files and records about the high schools, and so they will bring that into play and review your file initially. After the initial read, be it by the regional admissions rep, or now they're starting to pair representatives at a lot of schools, so they'll have 2 of them reading. They have 3 outcomes. The lower 10 or 20% are just not academically viable at that school, and so they go to the reject pile. The top couple of percent, the best applicants, are going to go to an accept pile. And both of those piles will be reread by someone else to confirm that initial determination. But the vast majority are going to be sent to committee. So they're typically reviewed a couple of times. There's a subcommittee, which is a portion of the admissions group, and then a full committee. And every school, of course, does this a little bit differently, but this is generally what the policy looks like. And often the subcommittee will review and then pitch the students to the full committee. And in some cases, I'm sorry, it's hard to read, some schools include faculty on their full committee review, and they spend an extensive amount of time going through every application. So typically, an application is read no fewer than 2 times, and sometimes as many as 4 or 5 times. So it's a very thorough, holistic review. Lots of discussion goes on, lots of factors and nuances are looked at. So let's look a little bit more at that academic index. Now, this is only used by the Ivy League schools. And basically, it's the average of the SAT or ACT scores, plus the average of your best 2 SAT subject tests, plus what they call the converted rank score. This uses the rank or the decile quartile. Sometimes they only give like you're in the top 10% or top 25% of the class. And they also use the GPA, and they've got ways to convert weighted and unweighted, and sometimes ranks are weighted and unweighted as well as GPAs. One thing that happens here that is sometimes detrimental to students is that the schools that report the percentiles, the colleges really don't have more information, so they tend to use the average. So for example, if you're reported to be in the top 10%, but you're actually like the 3rd student in the class, so maybe you're in the top 1% or top 2%, the college has no other way than to say everybody in the top 10%, because we don't know, is going to be considered at the top, at 5%, the average, the middle of the group. So for you, since you're in that upper half of that grouping, it's detrimental to your score. But there are lots of ways. This is not perfect. They know that. There are lots of flaws about it, but it gives them a basic idea of your academic robustness and ability to handle what they are offering on their campuses. And again, this is only used by the Ivy League schools, but I thought it was worth time discussing because your other schools are also having something similar. There's some way that they vet out and summarize your academic credentials. And the Ivy schools, as I said before, oh, so can't read the whole thing. 2/3 of the decision is based on, or the academic index, 2/3 is based on test scores, 1/3 is based on the GPA and rank. There are ways that they make those more equivalent through the process of analysis, so it ends up really being more half and half. As I mentioned previously, recruited athletes kind of have a different standard than everyone else. So minimum right now is 176. The maximum of the academic index is 240. So your top ranked students are going to have a 230 or above academic index, and 90% of them are going to get accepted. Of the next group, they are going to have at least a 221, and 76% of them will get accepted typically. And then the last group are your average applicants. That's the top 10% of their class, and they have about a 25% acceptance. So this is one place where you really see that the academics predominates the admissions decision. Now, all the Ivies will send, especially to that initial group that automatically or directly goes to the accepted pile, they'll get what's called a likely letter. And it's a love letter from the colleges. It's a "we like you a lot." Some call it a provisional acceptance letter. And it basically says, yep, we like you a lot. Please come here. You are going to get accepted. So it is not an acceptance, but it is an indication that you will get accepted. So unless you do something really stupid, expect an acceptance letter from that college or university. And some schools send one round of these letters, some send two, and some don't send any. So if you get one, rejoice, because they're very hard to get. Most students don't ever see these. But if you get one, celebrate. If not, don't worry about it. So let's take a look at the traits of the accepted. So the traits of the accepted have the highest academic rigor possible at their school and great grades. You'll see in capitals here, love of learning and academic potential. They need to be evident throughout the application. These elite schools are not looking for your grinders. They work hard, they're diligent, they show up and they give the good grades, yippee, but that's it. And they're just sort of looking for grades and grinding it out, but they are not really curious and loving what they're learning and going beyond. That's really what these top tier schools are looking for, which makes sense given that the level that they are educating on and the resources they have available to their students, that they would look for that student that is exceptional. Obviously, strong AP, IB, SAT, ACT, SAT subject scores are absolutely key. The writing on the application must showcase their academic strengths and their intellectual ability. We'll talk more about these in detail. The recommendations must be outstanding. Absolutely must be. So you can go crash boom on a bad recommendation for a number of reasons, and we'll talk about that shortly as well. You need to show some academic initiative, and that can be done through summer programs, independent research, regional awards, and a number of other ways. They want to see significant leadership, not just extracurricular participation, but some leadership. And that can be done in a number of ways as well. And then strong character and personality. They want you to be someone who contributes to their college campus, not just shows up and is there. There are some red flags. Oh, wait, before I share this, I'm sorry. And a couple of quotes from the former president at Yale. He wrote, "I'm inclined to believe that the person who gives every ounce to do something superbly has an advantage over the person whose capacities may be great, but who seems to have no desire to stretch them to their limit." So within the context of each applicant's life and circumstances, so again, they're looking in context, they look for that desire and the ability to stretch your limits. And then from University of Chicago, which does things in a very unique way, they look for bright students with an unquenchable thirst for knowledge and an interest in encountering new ideas. So for their essay, they encourage students to tell us who you are in your own voice, not what you think we want to hear. Show us how you made the most of your high school experience and pursued opportunities to do things that are meaningful to you. And I thought those two really summed up what these schools are looking for. So let's take a look here at the red flags. One of the things right now that's a red flag is if you come across as intolerant or a bigot, very judgmental. They want students who are going to entertain ideas and consider them and discuss them, not just dismiss them out of hand. So you may disagree with the idea and you may vehemently disagree with it, but you need to be able to engage in that conversation. Must be able to do that. Honor violations, you cheated, plagiarized, that sort of thing. A discipline problem, got expelled. Some kind of a negative character assessment on recommendations. You know, you're a brown nose, or you're not kind to, you're really so cutthroat, you're unkind to everyone around you. Not having or any extracurricular activities to speak of, maybe very few, very minor. That is a big red flag that you're not going to do anything extra. You're not stretching yourself at all. You're just kind of getting through, or your academics are taking up so much of your time that you have no time to do anything else, which means you're probably not going to be able to stretch to the next level at the college. Very low interview ratings is a red flag. It usually won't break you, but it is not good. And then again, as I mentioned, that diligent but doesn't demonstrate a love of learning. That's another red flag. They really don't want to just see you grinding through and getting the grades. I do want to note a couple of things. 60 to 75% of Ivy League students went to public high schools. So you don't have to think you have to go to a private school or you have to go to certain schools. Not really, not really, when most of the kids are coming from public schools. And some tips, most of those top applicants are taking 3 to 6 SAT subject tests, even though only 2 may be required. That way they have additional scores and the school's going to use the best too. So a lot of those students that are the elite students are going to start taking these tests freshman year. Admissions, as they review your entire application, they look for patterns of academic interest, your leadership ability, your in-depth involvement, dedication to one or more activities, a real passion for something. They're not asking you to be leader of everything, but there should be 1 or 2 areas where they can really see you're passionate about, you've moved things to the next level, you're stretching, you're moving beyond. So let's look a little bit more in depth. Being scholarly, as I've said over and over and over, love to learn and let it show. That is essential. Develop academic interests and pursue them. For example, I worked with a student a few years ago who in her freshman biology class, there was a chapter on genetics. Fascinated her. She spent hour after hour after hour exploring genetics and finding more subcategories within it and just kind of went hog wild in a sense, exploring this academic field, and her high school didn't offer any classes in it. She was just interested, and so she just kept exploring it. That's the kind of student these schools are looking for. Now, while you may develop academic interests in certain areas and pursue them, they do expect you to do well across the board. You really can't get in if you're very heavy math and science, but your communications, your English skills are poor, or vice versa. They expect you to passionately pursue an interest or two, but still do well across the board. And one of the traits that they will see, they will pick up on, is comments about partnering with teachers or companies or colleges in your area to explore the subjects you're interested in further. They will see you in your teacher recommendation, the teacher commenting about the different projects you're working on outside of school, and you're touching base with them and asking who they know, and they might be connecting with professors, and they're aware of what you're interested in over and above that classroom material. Again, get focused. Do not do anything just because you think the colleges are going to like it. They are really not looking for people just trying to please them. They are looking for students who are authentic in what they're doing and really passionate about it, and they're doing it very, very well. One example is not wasting, but they really want to see you focus on your top sport and then on your academics, because this, in the end of the day, is about education, not about athletics. Athletics are important, but education is the key thing. And that way, if you're focused on one sport, you should be able to further excel in that sport than if you're doing 3 seasons of things. So, and this is not from me, this is what the admissions people are saying at these schools. This is what they're looking for. Get a job. Might be surprising, but admissions really, it's a positive mark on your application when they see that you have a job, and it may just be that you're a bagger at the grocery store or a stock clerk. And especially if you are from a wealthy area or a wealthy family, do not have your job just be some kind of internship at your parents' company. They want to see you actually out there working like everybody else and learning how to work, how to show up on time and work with others and take instructions from a boss that you don't know, all those sorts of things, because all of those skills are things you need to do very well at those upper tier schools. So it is very important. And a lot of kids skip this one. They don't need the money, so they don't do it. Well, there's a lot of other skills that they need to get. Dare to be different and to be excellent. I think you've probably picked that up from previous comments, but there it is again. Identify and pursue your interests, develop your talents, pursue awards, seek to get published, create a portfolio, create a blog and get a lot of people coming to it, or a fanfic or something that's in your area. You want to be high impact in your area of interest. You want to give presentations to groups. You really just want to expand everything you're doing in that area, which makes sense because if I'm super excited about this, and maybe my high school doesn't teach it, but maybe at the science fair I could do a project about it and a presentation to people, and I'm teaching my class in my area that's, like the genetics example, it's touched on, they know something about it, but here I've taken it, 6 or 7 steps beyond the high school curriculum. I can share that. So be different and be excellent. These are things that admissions is really looking for. Significant talent, as I've mentioned, an Olympic athlete, getting published, starting a business. Distinguish yourself in significant manners. Performing arts, there are theaters and there are theaters. There are art exhibits and there are art exhibits. So different caliber of performers and artists are going to be in different places. They really want to see you develop it like anybody naturally would with a passion. Leadership. One of the things that may surprise you is what they define as average. Average at these schools looks like being an Eagle Scout, a captain of 1 or 2 sports, and the editor-in-chief of the high school newspaper. That's average. So that should give you some idea of the kind of leadership they're looking for. If you really want to stand out, you need to be doing even more than that. So that's what they're expecting, and that's average. So if Eagle Scout is average, Gold Award for girls is average, that's pretty high. It takes years to accomplish those 2 things. So you need to be digging in and really moving yourself forward in every dimension of that, not just the academics and being in a silo and, reading books or taking online classes. That needs to come out into the world as well. And leadership is part of how you do that. National Academic Awards. Here are a few examples. The National Spelling Bee or the Geography Bee, the American Mathematics Competition tests, the Siemens competition, the science and math. So the high-level science fairs, the Intel one. We've got honor societies, the Science Bowl. There are dozens others, but this gives you just the basic idea of some of the ways that you can get national awards. And as you get into something that you're interested in, go look for them. What are they? Because that competition, that rubbing shoulders with other people with similar interests, it makes you better anyway. And it gives you a peer group that gets you and understands what you're into, which is wonderful. We all need to connect like that because obviously if you've taken something 3 or 4 or 5 notches beyond what the high school curriculum offers, you're by yourself as far as your peers go and what you're majorly interested in. So connecting through these competitions and other things helps you have that upper level peer group as well and helps you really perform at a higher level. Also, if your high school, because this is the case sometimes, they give no academic awards, you want to indicate that on your application so that the college understands that you don't have any because there weren't any to be had, not that you didn't do something. Otherwise, they don't necessarily know. So let's talk a little bit about admissions strategy. We have a number of ways to apply to college, and that early pool, they're going to have typically special circumstances. The early pool is going to have your athletic recruits, your VIP and development people, your legacy people. They're going to be in the early group. And typically the colleges will fill up about 40% of the freshman class out of the early groups. So the statistics will show you, and I've got bunches of them here, how the admissions rate is different and it's higher for the early groups. But a lot of that is a little bit skewed because you do have these flagged students applying early. Also, so let me explain what these are. Early action and early decision have early deadlines, typically November 1st, sometimes December 1st. Early action is not binding. Some of the schools have what's called single choice early action, like Harvard does, and they've got special requirements. Stanford has special requirements. You need to really read those because they limit the other schools you can apply to early. Early decision includes a contract that's binding. So if you get accepted, you're going there, period. You're done. And then regular decision is later deadlines, although sometimes they're as early as December 1st, but they can be much later. And that's going to be kind of everybody else. So you want to use those strategically. And if you are have your heart set on a school, it's an awesome fit for you, early decision might be the right thing. Early action always is a good thing if it's an option. Rolling is a little bit deceptive. It's anytime, and you're not going to see that at the upper tier schools, but you will see it at other schools. So I wanted to mention it. And sorry again that the print is a little bit skewed. Applications are up again, and so it's a little bit more demanding. The colleges are getting more efficient at processing applications, but that means that the pool is even bigger. So it's tough. As I mentioned, the admissions rates are different, and it's significant. Most students that get into these upper level schools are in the top 10% of their class. Most of them are getting 700 and above on the SATs, 31, 32 and above on the ACTs. And the early students do get accepted at a higher rate. So I am continually accumulating the stats, as are a number of my peers. So they're out there. So as we get into applying, I would like you to consider your applications. For example, Harvard will take the universal application, the coalition application, and the common application. Well, the three applications are not identical. So one of the first things you need to do is, whatever schools you're targeting, what applications do they take? And then which ones are the most advantageous to you? Which ones will help you display your accomplishments? Because having different kinds of accomplishments, the different applications have different strengths and weaknesses for demonstrating those to the colleges. So you really want to choose carefully. And I would also encourage, especially if you're applying early at an elite school, you don't necessarily want to use the common application if they have their own. That's another small factor, but by taking the time to fill out their application individually, and it's just for them, you're showing them some extra willingness to go above and beyond than doing the common application. And yep, you're going to have the supplemental questions that are just for their school, but the rest of it's common. You're saving time. It's efficient for you. That's all wonderful. But by doing a separate application just for them, that's showing them that above and beyond step one more time. So something to consider. Sometimes the time crunch just doesn't allow it, but it's one thing to consider. You want to prepare your applications well. I like this quote from Bear Bryant: little things make the difference. Everyone's well prepared in the big things, but only the winners perfect the little things. I thought that was so apropos, because 70 to 80% of the applicants at these elite schools could get in and do well. So differentiating yourself is all about the little things and doing them well. You want to take 3 months, not 3 days. You want to spend 30 to 40 hours on your essays. What do you want to say? What do you want to convey to admissions? And then strategically select your prompts. So there's a lot of thoughtfulness that goes into all of this and how you're going to present yourself. This is not something to do quickly. Admissions values honesty above everything else. So if they catch you lying, or things are not being verified, or they're sounding out of sync, or your essay is a different voice than everything else, they're going to pick up on that. So I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the whole essay process. So no matter, some of the essay topics are just so overused that they kind of roll their eyes. That no matter how hard it is, if you really push yourself, you're sure to succeed. Yeah, okay, snore. How I help humanity, because I went for a mission trip 2 weeks to here and did this. Okay. Some kind of a eulogy to this person that was important to you, and it's about them, and they're really looking for something about you. That injury loss recovery, the team was losing and then we came forward, or I got injured and then I recovered. Yeah, okay. They see a lot of those. Another one they see a lot of is, my parents divorced and I survived. Yes, that may be true, and it may be a significant factor, but it's not going to be the best kind of essay you can write. So a few suggestions about the best topics or kinds of essays is the slice of life essay. So this is kind of difficult. I had a student, it's difficult to describe, so let me give an example. I had a student this year who was a musical theater person, and she wrote her essay on the moment when her life changed. And she talked about being sweaty, coming out of the gym, getting out to her car, and the phone rings, and she almost didn't answer because she was just eager to get home, take a shower, and answered it. And it's the guy from the theater. inviting her for her first professional job as a choreographer. Her whole life changed. And she even had dialogue, her and a line and him and a line, back and forth, not for the whole essay, but just for a few lines. And that essay was a slice of her life, and it really showed her attitude. It showed how she approached life. It showed her dedication to her passion and a lot of other aspects of her personality. That's the kind of essay that really tends to stand out. And the incident can be small, it can seem to be insignificant, but by sharing it, you're sharing who you are. Make that come alive. Help admissions understand your character better, shed light on factors in your background that have influenced what kind of person you are, and just see who you are and hear your voice. You could write about something truly distinctive that you've done. Make it interesting. Give some special insight into your personality and make you seem like a real person so you come off that page. I've got a lot of mumbo jumbo there. I've taken these classes, I've gotten these grades, and lots of very flat information. So the essay is really where you pop and you make this about you. And they can really go, oh, hey, this person's like, wow, and this is the kind of person we want. You do want to have a literate friend read over your essay and then tell you about the kind of person they are perceiving coming through that essay. What are they seeing about you as portrayed through that essay? It may not be what you think you're trying to portray, or it may affirm that, yes, I'm sharing the right kind of details. If you have not expressed some significant aspect of your personality, you've not written a successful essay. So hopefully now you can see why it takes 30 to 40 hours, can take 3 months to really grind your way through a lot of drafts that just aren't quite there until you get to something that really you can bring alive. You need to come up with a creative way to relate your unique qualities. I love Dartmouth's comments, so I'll share with you. They say, make sure your essays illustrate your personality. Everything you say should help us understand those intangibles that can't be easily reflected in a resume. Show qualities like sense of humor, passion, intellectual curiosity, self-awareness, and social awareness. Your writing lets us get to know you, and we read every word. Help us envision what you'll bring to Dartmouth. So hopefully you have a good sense now for what to do with those essays. Recommendations. There are 3 categories of these. It's better to have short and substantive recommendations than long rambling ones. From the teachers especially, the recs are going to tell the schools a great deal about how you think, how you learn, how you contribute to your school community, what you add to a classroom dynamic. The best ones are not always from the teachers who got the best grade, but from the teachers who know you the best and can discuss the substance of your intellect and your character. They're as interested in your intellectual curiosity and your resilience as in your innate ability and work ethic. And those teachers can often share little examples that they will really show admissions those characteristics of you. The string of generic superlatives is really not as useful as specific, thoughtful discussion of your strengths, specific examples. They also will sometimes talk about your energy in class, your relationships with your classmates, your overall impact on the classroom environment. And teacher recommendations can make or break a close call student. You don't want them to say you're diligent. It just doesn't show dedication. You're plowing through. You need to light up the classroom, do extra research, stimulate class discussions. Now, counselor recommendations are going to be sent in with the transcripts. So counselors are going to give information about where you stand in the senior class, especially if the school doesn't rank or if they send the quartile sort of rankings. It's helpful to get specific information from 1 to 2 teachers, so you're asking your counselor to spend some time talking to teachers as well as your teacher is giving recommendations. This is a good avenue for your extenuating circumstances to be conveyed. The only time the student got B's was the period when they were in and out of school with mononucleosis, or our school's brand new and so we don't have these kind of classes, or we had no clubs, or our school was undergoing reconstruction and so classrooms were being moved around and there's a lot of disruption, or there was a significant illness or a death in the family or a birth in the family or some other thing that confirms your background and your circumstances. So it really helps them get a view of your context, both personally as well as with regard to your high school. This is also a place for them to comment that we don't give this kind of award. We limit AP classes to only 3 per student or something like that, because some schools have those kinds of policies. So the counselor recommendation is going to share all these things. So they're very important. And obviously, you need to know your high school counselor. Oh, and it's helpful, and sometimes counselors are not the most mathematical, so perhaps you could help them with this. Sometimes they'll say, while it's disappointing that so-and-so is in the second decile, so between 11th and 20th percent in the class, he or she is taking the most demanding classes possible. We don't weight grades. If we did, the student would be number what? Number 5 or whatever out of the class of so many. That sort of thing really helps the college confirm the rest of the profile. It helps them put that second decile position in context. So if you can help them do that, that would be very, very helpful. Some schools are going to ask for a peer recommendation. These are not graded on the student's writing, but they are asking a peer, another student or two, to provide insights into your personality and your character. Having them give examples is very helpful. And, obviously not being too colloquial, we do want formal language being used. And it's really a confirmation of the other things that are being presented. So don't let them stress out about it, but they are important to have if they are asked for. So many schools will invite you to an interview. These are not a significant part of the admissions criteria, but they are important to accept if they're offered. If you're doing campus visits and you can go to campus and do it then, that'd be great. Otherwise, do it with an alum. And it's really there to confirm what they've seen on the application or show a contradiction. So the most motivated students are actually chomping at the bit for an interview, for an example, opportunity to show them, hey, I'm doing this and that, and I can't wait to go to your school to do this and that and the other thing, and you've got this great lab or that other theater, all these opportunities, and they see that dynamism in the student. It's really hard to convey that on paper. We do our best, but the interview can just reinforce that. The outcomes from an interview, they're typically going to say, you're outstanding, which means you're superior in all respects. 1 in 100 applicant, rare. Hands up, affirmation, you should go in. A highly desirable rating means you're very appealing. You've got either strong academics, great extracurriculars, or personal strength, or both. They could give you a desirable rating, which means you're generally strong. You'd be an okay student. You should make a contribution to the life of the college community, but they're not like jumping up and down excited about you. Acceptable. Yeah, there's no significant weaknesses in the student. They could probably succeed academically and personally, just like many others. So nothing standing out about you, but you're acceptable. Recommended with reservations. So this is the first negative one. You have some strength in some areas, but there are reservations, and they're going to describe what they are. And then not recommended, you don't possess the overall academic promise or personal strengths expected, and they're also going to give reasons. So some students are going to do an interview thinking, this will make my application so much stronger and they're going to let me in because I took the extra step. If the rest of your application isn't strong, this is not going to tip it in your favor. This is really a confirmation or a flag saying, not exactly what you thought. There's some other things here going on. So that really is what it boils down to. The transcript is the most important part of the application. My sample here is a homeschool transcript because all the other ones that I have actually have names and grades and things on them. But they want you to take the most challenging classes possible. It's going to show the rigor of the courses. So there's 2 parts of the transcript. This is your standard part that we're all familiar with the list of classes you've taken and grades. It may include the schools that you've attended over the years, your achievements and awards, and sometimes even test scores will be on the transcript. They're not official, so you still need to send them in from the official places, the College Board or the ACT. There also will be a school report that goes with this, and that's going to tell them how many AP courses there are offered while you were there. They're going to get the context of what was offered, the rigor of the classes while you were there. And that will make a difference because they want to see that you've challenged yourself. They're also going to look here for your grade trend. Sometimes students don't do so well freshman year. They want to see you're trending upward if it's possible. If you get A's for 4 years, they can't really see a trend, but that's not always the case. Or sometimes you're getting A's everywhere but one subject, and you see that one creeping into B plus and A minus, and then it gets up to an A. They want to see that trending, that progression of classes getting more difficult and challenging yourself at the highest level possible at your school, and your grades trending up. Some schools don't look at freshman grades, some schools do. So you'll need to see that. And they will typically list your freshman, sophomore, junior classes as well as your first semester senior classes. So there is the transcript that gets sent when you apply, especially if you apply early. And then there's going to be a mid-year report, and they will send your after the first term grades. They'll send those as well. And then at the end of the year, they will send a final transcript. So you need to keep strong and challenged and performing well all the way through. And to be competitive at these top tier schools, it should be obvious, but it's not always. 4 years of English, 4 years of math through calculus if it's available, even if you're going to be a poli-sci major or a music major. 4 years of social science and history, 4 years of lab science, and 4 years of a foreign language. So this is the top track of college prep that you can take, and that is what is expected if you're going to be competitive. There may be a slight deviation. They're not going to totally hold it against you if it makes sense in context. So you might want to address it if that's not your situation. Taking a light course load your senior year because you can. You don't need those credits to graduate. You're done now. You're tired. Whatever that is, that speaks volumes to the admissions office in a very negative way. Don't even think about it if you're serious about an elite school. Test scores obviously need to be reported officially, and they are significantly important. You'll need to check each college's requirements. Some, like Penn, require you to give all the scores for all the sittings. Others do not. Some super score, which means they take the highest critical reading score of any sitting and the highest math score of any sitting, and then that's their SAT score. Some of them will also do the same thing for the 4 components of the ACT scores, and then come up with a new composite score. So you'll need to see what the policies are, but make sure those are reported and reported early, and also verify them, because if there are any typos anywhere, they may not get connected with your application. I had that happen with a student one time, sent the scores in October, and it was a couple months later before they and admissions had connected that admissions didn't have those scores in their file. They had the scores, but they hadn't connected it with the student because there was a typo in the birth date. So you'll need to make sure and confirm that they have them and they're in your file. It's a good idea to plan on spring AP and SAT test scores or subject tests together. For some kids, this is very obvious because everybody's doing it. Others kids, they just don't have the students around them, so I want to make sure I mention it. APs are only offered the first 2 weeks of May every year. Usually the weekend in between them, there's an SAT test date. So you can use that studying for that AP exam and that subject and take the SAT subject test in the same week. And that way you're getting 2 for 1 on your studying while it's all fresh in your mind. And the subject tests are only an hour long. It's not another 3 or 4 hour grueling test. So you can take multiple subject tests. You can take up to 3 on a given Saturday. And if you're taking more than that, you may need to use the May sitting and the June sitting. So you'll need to plan all your testing carefully, because if you're taking the SAT, you can't take a full SAT and subject test on the same testing date. So you need to be planning ahead and sorting through, but combining the AP and SAT time frame to be together is something very prudent to do. And one note about test scores as well. Students who get an 800 on the verbal SAT are always the ones who were read a lot to when they were little, and then they developed a real love of learning, a love of reading as they grew up. So even if they weren't challenged at school, they could read their way into things, and they learned the skills necessary to succeed. But invariably, these kids who get perfect verbal scores are the kids who read voraciously. So it's not really something you can study your way up to. And the number one issue in test prep is familiarity with the test, the kinds of questions that are going to be asked, how they're asked, the timing of the sections, all those sorts of things. And then number two most important thing as you prepare is your skills, actually knowing the material. So familiarity with the test is actually more important from the research as far as how it impacts your test scores. So let's take a minute to discuss college selection. I'd like you to consider a study by Dale and Kruger of the Mellon Foundation and Princeton, respectively. They summarized it as students accepted at highly selective institutions who instead went to moderately selective institutions had similar income levels 20 years later as the students who did attend the highly selective colleges. Of course, money is not the determinant of success. It's just a quantifiable component. There was another study done by Purdue and Gallup that showed that student involvement on campus and how they actually use the opportunities on campus had far more to do with their happiness and success in life later. Another study also shows that if you are barely into that elite school, you're going to feel bad about yourself. And so this comes into play with how you present at interviews and what kind of jobs you go after as you leave, because in that pool of students, you're the one getting the C's. You're in the bottom half of the class. You're not feeling great because all these kids are doing better than you. As opposed to if you step down just a smidge in selectivity of the college, you're going to be at the top of the class and feeling really good about yourself and stretching and advancing better. So you need to select your schools carefully. All of that being said, you obviously want to find campuses that fit your interest and style. They are very different, even among just the Ivy League and the elite schools. There's a huge spectrum. As I mentioned previously, University of Chicago is very unique in ever so many ways. Stanford's different. Northwestern is different. Penn, Dartmouth, all these schools, Harvard to Yale, extremely different. So where can you grow? What's the right atmosphere for you? Who offers what you're looking to do? All of those things. And then as you build your list, you want to have reach schools. Most of the schools should be good fit schools, and then at least one safety school. And that's financial as well as academic on all of those. I got ahead of myself. So this was from the study that I just mentioned. And I'll share with you some quotes from some alums. One woman went to both Harvard and Princeton, one for undergrad, one for graduate school. And she said, more people want to know how to get admission into Harvard. The fact that every person needs to find the best undergraduate college for him or herself is lost in the media hype. She was really exasperated about that. It's like everybody's gaming the top schools, but that might not be the right fit. Another man, he said, I'm a graduate of Yale, undergrad and med school from the 60s. I graduated top in my class, and I've benefited in innumerable ways from the incredible richness of my Yale education. All this said, both of my children attended smaller, excellent liberal arts colleges, and their lives are just fine too, thank you very much. I'm quoting him. Way too much is made these days of the value of an Ivy League education. It does not make you ruling class anymore, nor does it necessarily furnish your mind any better than alternatives. And I don't think many companies or professional groups care anymore either. Think about it. The professors, even at junior colleges, are now of such high quality, a talented student can get everything they need virtually anywhere, even, I dare say, online. And given that he graduated in the 60s, that's saying something. And as for learning from others about diversity and so on, well, that's a lifelong process for all of us. The elite schools have become so difficult to get into, especially with their current emphasis on internationalism, that students should stop worrying about it. Try if you wish, but make good backup plans and you'll be very happy and very well equipped for the 21st century. I thought his words were very appropriate and very helpful to put it in context. Go ahead and go for the gold, but make other plans as well. This is not the only place to do exceptionally well at. So I want to talk a little bit about the services through this because it's very hard for students to do all of this by themselves. So first year, I really help the students figure out what they want to do, get to know themselves better, develop their skills, their study skills, their time management, what it means to lead, how to have, building their confidence, not how to have it, but they actually need to accomplish something so that they can build it internally. And then starting campus visits and getting themselves exposed to different campuses and planning their summer activities, which are very significant when you are applying. That shows a number of things to admissions, and a lot of them aren't even thinking about it. And I will start even with consulting with families in 8th grade because they need to be lined up properly for high school. Sophomore year, we're going to continue that career search and the self-discovery because it takes time. Doing job shadowing and really exploring different aspects and facets of different careers takes time. Learning who you are and really testing things out just takes time. Again, I'll be mentoring them, developing them as future leaders. They'll be needing to take the PSAT this year. Some schools offer the pre-ACT. They're really going to do in-depth goal setting and more campus visits, and they're going to be refining their search. They're going to be creating their initial college list, which is going to dictate what they need to do next year, where you freak out because junior year is just full of tests. You've got the PSAT in October, you've got the SAT and ACT and AP tests and SAT subject tests, and you try not to go crazy through all of that. And your most demanding academic schedule of the 4 years is this year. So having somebody guiding you through, helping you as you have difficulties with leadership and you need to hone and refine your study skills, all of those sorts of things, keeping you on track and on time and organizing and helping you sift colleges in the background and organizing your campus visits and your summer programs and keeping it all together, keeping you on track, focused, calm is very important. So I work through all of those things with students. And then senior year, you hit the apply now button. It's time. So everything starts that summer before senior year. Applications open July 1st or August 1st. Essays need to be written. And we're actually pre-writing at the end of junior year as we're selecting schools and finalizing that. And, financial circumstances need to be evaluated several times throughout this process. So that's all being done as well. So again, through senior year, there's coaching calls, and sometimes we're meeting every day, sometimes it's once a week, sometimes once a month, depending on what's going on. What to say on your essays, how to say it, going through that process, and to go through that process with somebody who's been doing this for 14 years really makes a difference, because you don't know what you don't know when you're a high school senior trying to put forth your best foot. I always do a holistic review, just like I mentioned in the having a literate peer review your essay to see if the character traits and things that you're trying to convey are actually coming through. I do the whole thing with the application. So I kind of forget that I know you, and I go through a holistic review, and is this application telling me all those wonderful things about this person I've come to know? And if not, then we revise parts of it, because it's those little details and doing them well that really come into it. Like a CPA, I prepare and file the financial aid applications, and then I audit the awards at the end. One of my clients had this to say, and I thought it was worth sharing. Catherine O'Brien's assistance has been invaluable. That is impossible to put a price tag, as she has opened up a world of possibilities for my son, Christopher. Mrs. O'Brien was able to do more for Christopher in 3 months than I was ever able to do in years working with his 3 older siblings, researching the best colleges for just the right fit. There's absolutely no way for even the most involved parent to do anywhere near what Mrs. O'Brien does in narrowing down the colleges which best fit my son, after considering all factors: academics, athletics, financial aid, majors of interest, post-grad ambitions, career ambitions. I cannot say enough about the value with which Miss Catherine O'Brien brings to extremely complicated process and pressure-filled task of college and scholarship searching. She's removed a huge load from my shoulders. She's worth her weight in gold. And I'm sorry, his name got cut off, but that's from Mike Chavarria. He works for the Department of Justice in Dallas, Texas. And if you're interested, he's open to talking to people as well about his experience with me. But his son got offered over $600,000 in scholarships, and he's on a full ride at an excellent liberal arts school. And he's on track to go to do his graduate work that he had intended to do. It was excellent candidate, but then knowing how to help him find schools and line it all up, it was just a delight to work with him. So to start to work with me, we always start with a consultation, because we want to ensure a good fit and determine which of my consulting programs is right for your family. So in order to sign up for one, please go to my website, CelticCollegeConsultants.com, scroll down on the page, click on the link to schedule a meeting, and fill out that form. I'll contact you within a few days to schedule your consultation. I encourage you to call soon, because spaces are filling quickly. And in order to provide high quality services, since it is labor intensive, I limit the number of students in each graduating class that I work with. So I encourage you to do that soon. I want to thank you for coming, and I wanted to share a word from the former Assistant Director of Admissions at Dartmouth. This is what she had to say. The best counselors, here's my contact information, the best counselors are those who are able to match the student to the most appropriate colleges and to guide them along in the process so testing is done at the right time. Essays are written well in advance, requests for recommendations are well thought out, and all possible contingencies are provided for. A good counselor will know from experience what kind of college the student is capable of getting into and will include a few reach colleges, some real possibilities, and at least one safety school in case not all goes well. They will guide the student through the long and sometimes tiresome process, but they will not write the essays for him or try to invent talents that are just not there. The best counselors take a very low-profile stance and never call colleges directly or write letters on the student's behalf. The ideal independent counselor should be invisible as far as colleges are concerned. Parents should be aware that if admissions officers know that the student has had an independent counselor, it could have a negative impact on the student's application. I have had to explain that over and over to people that I really need to stay invisible, and I do. In short, independent counselors and consultants can be a tremendous help matching students with appropriate colleges, helping them navigate the college admissions maze, and helping them prepare top-notch applications. Parents should make sure that the counselor does not cross the ethical boundaries of writing the essays for the students or making inappropriate phone calls. As I said, that's from a former Assistant Director of Admissions at Dartmouth. I look forward to working with your family to make your college dreams come true. To schedule an initial consultation, please go to my website, CelticCollegeConsultants.com, scroll down, click the link to schedule a meeting, and fill out that form. I will contact you within a few days to schedule your consultation. Thank you very much, and God bless you.